Hi everybody, and welcome back to Plastic Models by a Regular Dude and part 2 of the Trumpeter 1/35 scale Panzer I late project. Alright, so in the last video I did the intro, talked a little bit about what I was going to be doing with this kit, showed the contents, all that kind of stuff. So just as a real quick reminder, my plan for this kit is to do vehicle A12 of the 9th Panzer Regiment, Großdeutschland, Romania, East Prussia, summer of 1944. So the version I am doing does have the zimmerit, so I will be using the kit zimmerit on this one. So let's move on to step 1 and we'll get cracking. Alright, so the parts I need for this is the hull, obviously. And then I need parts H21 and 22. So I'm going to do like I normally do on one of my step-by-step builds. I will demonstrate in each video, the first few parts I cut off and clean up, I will demonstrate how I cut them off, how I clean them up, the tool that I'm using to do it. And then from there on out, the rest of the time I'll cut the parts off and have those ready to go so as not to take up too much video time. Okay, so the first parts I need are H21 and H22. H22 on this side, H21. I've already cut off H21, so I'm going to show you what I do when I cut these things off. So, and what I'm going to do is like I normally do on a build series. So I'll demonstrate on the first few parts of a video how I cut the part off, how I clean it up, how I handle it in detail, talking about the tools I use and everything else. Then the rest of the video, that particular video, I'll do that off camera to save on some time so as not to use up video time. So anyway, here we go. So this one is 22. So what I do is I cut it away from the part, and for cutting I'm using a Tamiya NY2 cutter because it's very sharp. You can get right up against the parts to cut it, and it gives you a nice clean cut, and you have less cleanup to do afterwards. So what I do is I get it right up against the part like this and cut sprue gate off. This one I'm going to go sideways. These are really huge sprue gates, which is kind of weird, but no big thing. Anywhere it's a flat surface, I just go right flat up against the part and cut it off. That way there's minimal cleanup. And then for bigger ones like this on a curved surface, I'll kind of cut it at a little bit of an angle to where it leaves a part on the other side. Then I'll cut that off. That way it's a little more close to round. So it's a little easier to clean up. And then if there's still some left, I can use my hobby knife here, which is an X-Acto number 11 blade, which is the blade I use most. And very carefully, you notice I got my thumbs together here, it's to keep me from slipping and chopping myself. Very carefully. I'm more turning the part than pushing the blade. Safety first, you know. Okay, so that's pretty smoothed out there. So anything left, I will use a sanding stick. In this case, 400 grit Infinity Ultra Precision Series. And what I do is I keep it flat to the surface. Just go around like that. And I'm eliminating the mold seam line at the same time. Okay, then wherever there was a sprue gate, I'll give it a quick brush like that, just to make sure it's perfectly flat. There was a little one right there, and then that one right there. Okay, so now they're both cleaned up, we're ready to glue them on. That was 22, this one's 21. Okay, so first thing I'm gonna do is test fit it. So that fits right in there like that. Fits really well all the way around. There's a hole and a pin, and then this shape here fits right there, and that fits right there. So that looks pretty good. So what I'm gonna use to glue it, I'm gonna use extra thin. And in this case, I'm also going to use Model Master liquid cement. So I'm going to do this. This is what I'm going to use to tack it into place. So I don't think I really have to do this, but I'm just going to demonstrate it anyway. Just put a little bit on here on the surface where it glues, just to get it in place. Okay, then from there, put the lid back on here. Then from there, I'm going to take my Tamiya extra thin and just run it along the seams. This is so thin, the capillary action will pull it down inside of the part and glue it together. Okay, so that looks good. And I'm also going to run some right up here, just to make sure that this is glued together really well. Let's see if I need a clamp on here. Yeah, I'm gonna clamp it just to make sure it's totally flat. Sometimes I've found on modern kits, you have to kind of be careful because the tolerances can be so close at times that just a little bit out of alignment and it could cause problems down the line. So we'll let that set up really good. I'll go ahead and do the other one here. Now, sometimes you will see people use Tamiya extra thin. They'll take it and they'll just slather it all over there and then stick the part in place. Now, I'm not saying it doesn't work, because obviously it does, but the real intention of Tamiya extra thin is like I demonstrated on the other side. Now again, lots of people do it, and it's not, I don't want to say it's wrong or anything like that, but it's really designed to brush on and just let it flow through. That's why, see that part's real super tight right there, which is awesome. That's why if you need to get something to hold it in place until you can use this, that's why I use this. But again, even if I didn't do this part right here with the Model Master liquid cement, what I would do is I would just stick it in place, and I'll demonstrate it more later. Make sure it's all pressed into place, hold it, being careful not to let the glue get on my fingers, and again, just put it along the seam, let it get drawn into that joint, and you're good to go. Now this one's really tight, so I probably shouldn't need to clamp it, but I probably will anyway. So we got the cement in there, good to go. Clamp this one into place, let that sit for a second. All right, while that's drying, I am going to go ahead and cut off both these C38s, since they're both, and these G7s, since they're the same thing. So we got C38, C38, which is here and here. So I'm like, whoa. I'm gonna cut those off and get those cleaned up, and I'll also cut off both G7s. Okay, so part C38, it has a pin right here and a pin over here, one smaller than the other, so that way you know which one goes where. So in this case, the large one goes up front. Now, here's something to note. In doing my research on this kit, just see what other people had to say about it, apparently this part here is not supposed to be angled. It's supposed to be straight to the sponson. So I have a choice. I can either leave it like this, or I can make it level with the sponson. And I think I'm going to do that. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to cut off the smaller pin here in the back so I can swivel it up. But wait, should I swivel it up or should I swivel it down? That's the question. You know what? Cancel that. I'm just going to leave it like this. It may be incorrect, but that is okay. So now here, after I just said what I said about to me extra thin, I'm going to do something weird. In a case like this, I'll fill that hole up. Now the reason I don't like using to me extra thin to tack parts together like this is it evaporates so quickly, which is what makes it dry so quickly. But if there's a puddle in there, it's not going to dry as quickly or cure as quickly. So I'm okay to put the part in and maybe get it into position. Holy Toledo. When I wasn't on camera, I popped that thing right there. There we go. Then I can pop it into place. And just to make sure, I'll just touch a little bit there and there. Now, one thing I was going to say, in doing research, you discover things that are maybe incorrect about a kit compared to real life. And for the most part, I like to correct things that I can. However, in a case like this, this is going to be behind the idler in the track. It's not going to be seen at all. So I'm not quite as concerned about it, especially since I don't know for sure which end I would twist up, the back or the front. Okay, so I'm going to go with the instructions, do it like this, for good or ill. See, this is why I don't like to use to me extra thin like that, because you drop parts, things start drying. But at least I was able to tack it into place like that, and then put another dab of cement in there just to make sure it doesn't go anywhere. Okay, so there's that. So now I need to put on the G7 pieces. Okay, so according to the instructions, this notched out part needs to face the bottom of the hole, which is the way it's facing right now. So it's going to fit right there like that. Okay? So a little tiny bit of cement to hold it in place. Like that. Make sure it is going in line with the hull. And put some cement in there like that. Okay, so that fit together pretty good. Let's do the other one. Make sure it's perfectly flat. Little dot of cement to hold it in place. looks nice and lined up. Glue on the inside and outside edge. And that is good there. So that ends step one. All right, so now it is not finished with step one, sorry. I still got to do the bottom part, which is the sides and those two parts there. So these are bigger parts, so I am going to zoom out a little bit, and I need to cut off A1 and A14 to start. Okay, I've got these cleaned up. Now, here's something to look for. So, I'm going to put this in place here. There's these two tabs that fit in these slots here. Boom, like that. Oh, but wait, this isn't going down all the way. What's going on? Well, there are ejector pin marks, and sometimes they protrude. They can either have a bit of flash around them, or they can completely protrude out. So we have to deal with it. And here is what I'm going to do. Okay, using this flat chisel type blade, I am just going to gently scrape it off like that. And I'm going to check them all. And it doesn't even hurt if you go below the surface on these, as long as you don't get out to the edge. So you could use like a curved type blade, like I was showing you earlier in the other video. With a curved blade like this, whether it's one for an X-Acto or a surgical type thing, you can scrape it like this and it'll indent it. Because it'd be better for it to be indented than it to be protruding. So continue on with these, make sure they're nice and flat. Like that. Then we'll test fit it again. Make sure it's nice and flat, which it is. It's beautiful to see. You want it nice and flat and tight all the way around. Now this is another place where I'm going to use this glue, because I can use it all down the center, then use this on the edges and get a really nice strong bond. So that's what I'm going to do. And then I'm going to use my clamps and clamp them in place. So start here. Nice bead glue all the way down. That's some strong smelling stuff. Squish it all into place really well. Make sure it's bottomed out completely, because you want it all to line up. And then using my liquid cement, to be extra thin I should say, run it all along these edges, because I want everything to fit as tight as possible, because I don't want any changes. I want to minimize the changes in tolerance. I'm a very tolerant person, so don't get me wrong. It's just I'm not tolerant for intolerance on a model. Does that make sense? that. And then clamp away. And it won't take very long for it to set up, so it, it's not going to drag things out. So while that one is drying, see, it's all nice and even all the way across the bottom there. Just what I want. Okay, so that's all good. I'm gonna put a little bit more right here. Okay, well that's drying. I'm gonna go ahead and cut out both of these B9s and have those ready to go. All right, so I'm gonna put those in place. Seems like a weird detail because the only way you can really see the bolt heads or drain plugs or whatever they are is looking up underneath, but hey, they're there, so that's cool. By the way, the tweezers, Tamiya Craft Tools tweezers. I don't know my mom about it, but they're really rigid. They don't flex much. Really good tweezers. So those are in place. So we'll just put a little cement around the edge. Wow, a little bit too much there, I would say. As you can see, that's pretty much evaporated already. Okay, so I think we're good on this side. So let's take the clamps off and glue the other side after I take care of these ejector pin marks. Okay, everything's nice and smooth there. So let's go ahead and do the glue there. Same thing, a couple of tabs, a couple of slots. Make sure they're pushed all the way down, pressed all the way in. They can be a tight fit, it seems. All right, so then clamp that. Clamp that. Run a little bit more down through here. Clamp that and that. I'm going to take my other clamp, clamp that. Okay, and then I'll just run some cement down through here. Like that. And then if you need to clamp all the way across, or if you want to, get a big clamp. Boom. Just like that, laddie. I'll do it here too. I just like to make sure this stuff is really firmly clamped in place. Maybe overkill, maybe not. So let's let that dry. Okay, so now comes the part that I'm unfamiliar with, and that is the zimmerit. So, first thing I had to do is I had to determine which side is front and back. That was actually pretty easy because this front plate here, the ball mount's on the left. So this is the side that I want up. So I'm going to go ahead and mark that with a small piece of tape so I know which side is up. Okay, I'll do the same thing with the other part when I get to it. So what I need to do is I need to cut this. These two pieces here go on here, so I need to cut them from this part here. Now, I wish I had a small cutting pad. Hold on a second. All right, so I got my extra mat. So here's what I need to do. I need to cut these, and I need to cut them straight. So I think I'm going to use this to assist me. Now I'd rather cut it off a little extra. Because I can always sand it. It's really easy to cut because it's so thin. That. Turn it around. The first thing I want to do, it's kind of hard to see it when you're just looking at it like this, but when you get your sanding stick, it's a lot easier to see it. And it can always be sanded and trimmed once it's in place on the vehicle, but you want to make sure there's no edge because it'll show up whenever you start doing weathering. So there's that one. Get it nice and smooth. Okay, so it's all cut up and ready to go. This one piece. So I'll do the other ones off screen. Now, one thing to note here is there's a couple of protrusions. Those are going to have to be cut off because there is no... Now look, here's the thing that's really cool. See how well that fits? They just fit right in there. All those mounting holes for the side skirts. Boom. Very nice. Really stoked. But I'm going to have to trim these two little parts off because, as I was saying, there's no accommodation in the back for those. So I'll have to cut them off, but that's not a big deal. Now, one thing to consider on Tiger tanks, a lot of times the zimmerit got chipped off and banged off. Chipped off from small or large shell hits, whatever. Now, in looking at photographs, reference photos of A12, there doesn't seem, now there's very limited views, but the whole front of the vehicle doesn't show any damage at all, and that's one of the places where it does get chipped a lot from running into things and everything else, and there's none on this side here or on the turret. So if there was damage, now would be the time to do it. You could like just chip and cut jaggedly to make it look like it's chipped off because it's the type of paste. Put it in place and you would have exposed steel that you could prime or whatever, so it, you know, show the difference. But in this case, it's not a deal, so I'm going to trim these parts off right here using the same method. Use these. If I'd have noticed them, I could have done them before they were actually installed, but I didn't, so we'll just do it like this. Okay, those are cut off. So, whoops. So now this is ready to go into place. Man, I love the way that fits. That is really nice. Super flat. Sweet Fay Tanner. Digging it. So I'm going to use this cement again. Not very much, and I don't want to get it near those mounting points too close because I would hate for it to come oozing out of there. And I'll be clamping and everything just like I did with the other. And then I'll be putting cement along the edge just like I did with the other, with the main panels. So let's put it in place here. Just like that. Man. Pretty stoked. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start here, do a little bit, put a clamp on, and work my way back. Put that there like that. Okay. Then, in addition to that, I'm also going to tape it because I want, again, I want this to be really flush. Okay, so let's go ahead. Keep moving down the edge. This is where it pays to have patience and not want to rush through the job. And then the last little stretch right here. Now, because the way this is molded, some of the parts protrude out, like for each column. So it may not sit totally flat all the way across. So it's like, don't sweat it. And boom. All right. right, just like that. So I'll let that dry for a few minutes, and then I'll do the other side. All right, so that ends, for sure, step 1. Now, I know I only got one step done, but keep in mind, this was the step where I was demonstrating how I cut and clean parts, working with something that I'm unfamiliar with on an armor kit, and that's putting this zimmerit on here. So it should move along a little bit quicker, but I want to keep these videos to a tolerable level. I don't want to make them too long. So with that said, next time when I come back, before I come back, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sand this little lip of zimmerit. I'm going to sand it flush with the top of the hole so it's nice and smooth, so there's no seam. That'll be the first thing I'll do. That way when I come back, we'll be ready to move on to step number 2. So, as always, thanks for watching part 2 of the 1/35th scale Trumpeter Tiger 1 late version with zimmerit. As always, if you have any hints, tips, questions, concerns, anything like that, put them in the comment section down below and I'll get back to you. So until next time for part 3, thanks for watching, and I will see you all later.